Hey there, my fellow designers and creatives. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to another video on the channel. This video is another video in my series on redesigning the Fold Money app. This video is going to be super interesting and there's a lot to cover. So without any further ado, let's get started. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I uploaded this video basically talking about the impact of Figma AI on the future of product design. And I spoke a lot about critical thinking and problem solving as a skill that's going to become more important when AI comes in, right? And I got a lot of comments over here where people were asking me to make videos on critical thinking and problem solving. While it's very hard to make a video specifically about critical thinking, because if I do it, it's going to become like a theory video. It's important to learn problem solving and critical thinking through other means. And hopefully videos like this is going to help you understand how to think, what to think, and what to observe, right? I'm going to have more videos coming soon where I'm going to be focusing on these things, but this video is going to help you understand a little bit about how to be a good problem solver. Okay, so let's get started. Now, before we go ahead and look at the actual screens and understand what's wrong with them and what needs to be fixed, let's understand the entire concept of a credit card system. Now, most of you may already know this, but this is for those who don't really have a clear understanding. And I'm also going to be talking about how this fits into the entire ecosystem with Fold Money and whether it makes sense or not, right? So, what is a credit system? So basically, you make transactions for a period of approximate 30 days, right? So 1 month, you make transactions and you don't really have to pay anything when you're making the transaction. You receive the bill at the end of the period. For example, you can make transactions from December 18th to Jan 18th. And for the month of Jan, you're going to get your credit card bill on Jan 18th, right? And this is how it works for me and my banks. I don't know if this is the general norm or if other banks have different periods. But for me, my credit card period is from the 18th of 1 month to the 18th of the next month. And then you have around 20 days to pay your bill. So once my bill is generated on Jan 18th, I have till Feb 17th, which is 20 days to make the payment, right? So this is typically how it works. And how do usually people pay the bill, right? So you use the bank app that you have. So if you have HDFC or ICICI Access or whatever, you can use net banking, you can pay with UPI or the debit card. And obviously you can log into the website and do it, or you can use the bank app. Of course, we also have third-party apps, which a lot of people are already on the product. So we have Cred and Check. Check is new. That's coming to the market in the last 1.5 years. But this is pretty much how they do it. And I don't really have any data of how people make their credit card bills. But I believe a very large majority of people in India who have credit cards use Cred, right? So this is how the current behavior of payment works. And next, the question would be, how much should you pay, right? So we talked about how do you pay, and then you talk about how much should pay. So you actually can pay any amount you want, but the minimum amount you can pay is around 5% of your credit card limit. So if you've probably spent 100 rupees as your credit card expenses, then you have to minimum amount you have to pay is 5%. But of course, you can pay something more than that or the full amount, right, if you don't have the money with you, right? So you have the complete flexibility to do it, but it's required that you minimum pay around 5%. Now, where does Fold Money stand in the cycle? Now, the most important thing to understand here is that the credit card transactions you make, they don't show up in Fold Money's transaction list as they are not debited from the account. What does this mean? So for example, if you used your credit card to buy shoes for 6,000 rupees, you bought a shirt for 2,000 rupees, and you did some recharge of 500 rupees, the total of your credit card balance is 8,500 rupees. Now, because money has not been debited from your account when you made these 3 transactions, it doesn't show on the Fold Money app. And of course, it won't show because even your bank statement does not show because the money is not yet debited, right? All of this is credit. And when the credit card bill is paid, right, when you make the payment of 8,500 rupees, Fold Money will register one expense transaction of 8,500 rupees. So you paid 8,500 in total, and then that is going to be considered as an expense, right? So you're not going to have 3 splits. You're going to have this one big transaction of 8,500 rupees for all the 3 items that you spent money on, right? So this is how it's going to sort of work in Fold Money. Now, what is the problem with that? Now, the problem here is that the category totals will show the incorrect values. Why? Because let's say your total investment for a particular period was 50,000 rupees. Shopping, you spent 1,400 rupees. Subscription was 200 rupees. And then you're going to have another category called as credit bill, which is 8,500 rupees. Because this recharge that you did of 500 rupees is not going to be shown over here, right? Because it is going to be recorded as a credit card expense transaction, right? So if you want to check how much did you spend on shopping, right? So let's say shoes and shirt, it's going to be 1,400 plus 6,000 plus 2,000 because that entire thing comes under shopping. But this shopping is only from your debit card, right? When money was debited from your account. This investment was when you invested 50,000 rupees by debiting your account. This subscription by debiting. So what this means is that the category totals are showing the incorrect value. And you have this credit bill section of 8,500 rupees, which is something totally different, right? And so you don't really understand how much did you actually spend on a particular category, and it's sort of misleading. Your total expense might be true, but at a category level, it's incorrect, right? And this will also affect your budgeting. Of course, now Fold Money does not have the feature of budgeting, but if they did have, it would really affect, because if you kept a maximum limit of, 5,000 rupees for shopping, it would say that you're under limit, but essentially you're not under limit because you spent around 7,000 rupees or 8,000 rupees on other things, right? So you exceeded your budget, right? So this would affect budgeting as well, right? Now, this is common sense to probably have in an app like this. Of course, you should be able to add the credit card expenses to the all category totals. But for some reason, Fold Money is not doing it. I don't know if it's a technical limitation or what it is. But the interesting thing is that they are able to identify each of the transactions that are forming a part of the credit bill. So if you're able to identify them, if you're able to tag them, you should sort of combine it with this as well. So if you look at the problem statement, right? If we define a how might we statement, it's basically quite simple. How might we ensure that the category totals reflect the credit card expense transactions too, right? This is basically the most important thing for a user who is on the Fold Money app, because no other app can do this for you, right? And this is obviously not something a designer should solve. This is basically a product solution, right? And this is basically an engineering solution. You just take the values that are over here, which were identified as the credit card expenses, and then you make sure that it's a part of the category totals. It's simple. It's just engineering work that you have to do in code. There's nothing to do to solve as a designer, right? But this would be a how might be statement, but this is mainly for product and not really for design. So what does this actually mean? It means we need to question if Fold Money should even have this feature in the first place, right? And if you think about it, who would be using this feature? Right? It's for people who don't have access to cred or check, right? If they want access to cred or check, but maybe due to some reason of a lower credit score, they're not able to get in, then this app would make sense. But most of the people already have access to cred and check. So why do they need Fold Money, right? Number two, they should use Fold Money if it supports all cards. At the moment, Fold Money doesn't support all the cards. It supports a few cards. So if you don't have a specific card that they have access, that they allow, then you're basically not going to use Fold Money, right? And the credit card expenses should be reflected in the category totals. So if this is probably the most major thing, if this is not being done, then there is absolutely no point of having this feature in the app at all. And at the moment, because they're not doing this, it doesn't make any sense to have it. And they don't even support all the cards. And there's only a small percentage of users who don't have access to credit and check. Of course, I'm making an assumption over here, but I believe I might be right over here. And they don't even allow you to make payments through the app. So there's no point in having it at all. So at the moment, if you look at this, because they're not solving this one problem, it doesn't make any sense to have this feature at all in the app. Now, I understand that it's still there because they're going to build it, they're going to work on it, they're going to improve it. But at the moment, this feature is just a good to have feature and is not really solving any problem for the user whatsoever. And let's talk about what are the user needs of people using credit cards. What they want to know is they want to know how much did they spend on the credit card on a particular date. Whether the bill has come or not, it doesn't matter. On a random day when I open the app, I need to know how much have I spent on my credit card so far, right? That's number one. Then when your bill comes, you want to know how much is your credit card bill, probably the most important thing. Then you want to see a breakdown of all the expenses. What exactly did you spend money on and what is the total coming from? Of course, showing categories here also makes a lot of sense. And then of course, you want to have a smooth payment method. So today, all of these user needs are met by apps like Cred and Check. And even if they're not using it, you already have systems in place to do it, right? A lot of people would still be using the native net banking or UPI to use their regular bank app to do it, right? So at the moment, all of these needs are being done by other purposes, and Fold Money is not really solving any of the above problems over here for credit cards. And so if this credit card feature really has to make a lot of sense, then there's a lot of work that these people have to do and really have to focus on solving important problems, which is probably this, where you make sure that the credit card expenses are reflected in the category totals too. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and start looking at the feature and see how it can be improved from a UX design standpoint, from a UI standpoint, and from a product standpoint also. All right. So I'm going to start off by showing you the screenshots. Now, ideally, I wanted to do this on my phone and record it, but it's a little complicated to do it because there are so many states, and I felt it's a lot easier to show this visually mapped out so that you could register this in your head. So this is basically the home tab of the Fold Money app. When you have a credit card, you want to see this section over here with some information. So it says 4,089. Now you have this edit icon. When you tap on it, you get the screen where you can show as a list or cards. First of all, I don't even know why this feature should exist. You could somehow design it in a way where you could show multiple cards over here. I think you would probably have maximum 3. That's typically how much somebody would have. Majority of users would have just one credit card. So I don't really see the necessity to have this list view versus card view. And the most weirdest thing over here is that this is in the form of a tab. Ideally, it should be in the form of a menu because tabs basically segmented controls. It shouldn't be used to sort of like switch. It's not like a switcher or a toggle, to turn on and off, right? So this pattern itself is very weird, first of all. And they've used, visually this looks really bad. So for example, here it says show as, and on the right side, you have cards, right? And I will not know what is what until I actually tap on it, right? And visually, they've just randomly placed things over here, and this is not very well thought through. And when you tap on the list view, I don't know which view this is, but I guess this is the list view. You see so much going on over here. You see, this is a thicker font. You've got 2, 3 colors over here. You've got this icon just randomly floating somewhere. It says build you. Here it says outstanding. Come on, it's so visually this looks really poor in my opinion, right? But anyway, now I went ahead and redesigned this section to keep things very clear, and I removed this entire feature itself. It doesn't make any sense to sort of have this feature over here, and we don't really need this list view. We just need the main view over here, this is the actual design. Now, basically, what I did, keep things very simple. I used the same current balance information that we have, and I went ahead and removed a couple of things and reordered things to make sure that we have similar consistency and similar patterns over here. Of course, this looks also quite similar and looks a little bit cleaner than this, of course. But I removed all unnecessary information like this icon, this reload thing, because this seems to be done real time. So I don't really know why this is actually needed. Pretty simple and straightforward, very clean and minimal, nothing else to do over here. Okay, so now we're going to go into the card info, which is probably the most important thing. This is where we're going to be focusing most of our time. So let me quickly explain what is happening. So this is obviously the home screen, and this is the balance due. And when you tap on it, you get the details screen. Now, there's a lot to cover over here, and let me go one by one. First of all, from the top, you can see that's the name of the card, and this title is not in the center because you have these 2 icons and they are being pushed. So this is not even coded properly, right? No matter how many icons you have, this needs to be in the center of the screen. And as you can see, it's towards the left, right? So this is clearly a bug. This is definitely poor queuing. I don't even know if they've actually looked into things like this, but this has to be fixed. Number 2, it says since June 18, right? Now, when I land on this, what I ideally want to quickly understand is this value. All the information on the screen is for which period. That is the most important thing, right? Because I see so many things over here, which is I see June 18th, I see statement in 7 days, I see July 18th, and what am I actually looking at? There's so much of visual noise over here that I just want to know which month is this, right? And you also have this icon here on the left, which is like this wheel icon. I don't even know what that is. If anybody knows what this icon is, please let me know in the comments, because I've tried to figure out what this is and it's super weird. I don't even know what this is, right? And then you have statement in 7 days. Now, I don't even understand why that needs to be there and why this needs to be shown in the form of a progress bar. Because it's not like, you're looking at this every day and you're going to be motivated by this progress bar. It's not like activity rings, or it's not like a fitness tracker or anything like that. And you've already said that the next statement is coming on July 18th. So this information is redundant. Like, I don't care how many days are left. I know that it's going to come on July 18th, and cool, I will check it out on July 18th. I don't need to know how many days is left. And it's absolutely valueless, right? And then you have here the value, and then it says the next statement on July 18th, and then it says 0.82% utilized. Now, essentially, how much you have used from your credit limit is not that important, because you will typically not use the entire amount. But I understand that there is a case where you do probably spend a lot and you want to remain within the 30% limit, because if you spend less than 30%, that's good for your credit score. So maybe there's a small percentage of users who actually care about that. But as long as people are controlling and are actually aware of the expenses that they're making, they don't really have to worry about whether it's crossing 30 or not. But I understand it's important to have, but not for majority of users. This is probably going to be helpful for a very small percentage of users who actually want to keep track of what is the utilization rate, right? And you also have this section, which is pretty much connected to this, but visually it is separated, and I don't know why that is. And here, this is basically the credit limit that you have left. So essentially, it just says left, and I think they should come up with really better copy saying like credit amount remaining or credit limit remaining. I think that's more important than just saying left. It feels like this is not very well thought through. And ideally, all of this should be together. Out of 5 lakh rupees, 0.82% is utilized, and the balance is this. And you've got this chart, which is half, and this is 30%, and then here you've got half. I mean, I don't even know, right, if this is really helpful, and it's just adding so much visual noise. This is not why I opened the app, right? This is not, if I open the app probably 100 times, one time I would be interested in to see this, but the 99 times I would be interested to see other information, right? So there is so much of visual clutter. And the weird thing here is that both of this, tapping on both of this will open up this one screen. I'll come to the screen a little bit later, and as you can see, I don't even know what to focus on over here, but this is the screen where you get all the information. I'm going to talk about this in a separate section in the video. But for now, both of this opens the same link, and they're disconnected from each other, and they're put in separate containers, which is definitely not good design. Now here you have something called as bill due, and this is 2,768 rupees, and it says bill paid. Now, the moment somebody looks at this, it raises so many questions. Number one, it says 4,000 rupees outstanding, but then the bill is due for 2,700. But then you're also saying that my statement is supposed to come on July 18th, which is the future. So why are you asking me if I already paid my bill, right? So just by looking at this, it's like, what am I even looking at, right? And if you look at this 4,089 rupees, and I don't know how many of you will get this right, but this 4,089 rupees is not the expenses I incurred for this particular period. It is actually 2,768, which is the bill from the previous month, and adding all the transactions that I made this month comes up to 4,089 rupees. So looking at the screen itself, it is so visually cluttered. There are so many colors, there's so many font sizes, there's so much information. It's not clear as to what is what at all. And this CTA is putting a question mark bill paid, right? I think it should have much better CTA. Like putting a question mark in a CTA, I don't know, doesn't really make much sense to me. But clearly there are so many problems over here. By the way, side note, if any of you play PlayStation a lot and you have a PlayStation ID, do DM me. I'll probably add you to my PlayStation friends. That'd be pretty cool to see what you guys are playing around with. Anyway, so coming back to the video. Here, if I tap on since June 18, what I basically get is the ability to select the various months, and here I can see it. Now here again, there's so much going on. Here you have 2024, which is basically like tabs. So if you have 2023, it would show, but because this feature was sort of released only in 2024, I guess, it doesn't even make sense to have this. Then here it says June to July. It's so weird that everywhere else they say May 18 to June 18, but here they say June to July. Why not June 18 to July 18, right? And even if you see the metadata over here, it says how many transactions. I don't know how important this is. Maybe it's good to have, but I wouldn't really care about how many transactions and how much is utilized. Maybe utilize would make a little bit more sense, but I don't know about transactions. But anyway, that's fine. This is probably the most only thing that's quite helpful, which is bill due for May 18th to June 18th. But the weird thing here is that this bill is being shown over here, which is in the July month, right? So I'm in the current cycle, which is the month of July, but this 2768 is pertaining to this month, right? So there is so much of mix up that's going on around here, right? Because essentially when I open this screen and I'll open for a particular month, I just want to know about that particular month. I don't want to know about anything else, and don't confuse me with random numbers. Because think about it, right? If I open this app and I open the screen and I suddenly see 4,089 rupees and I'm like, wow, how did I spend 4,089 rupees? I barely spent anything this month. But that's because you have this current expenses plus this extra expenses of the previous month. And this bill you haven't paid yet, right? And I will pay it. But why are you counting that as the current outstanding for this particular month, right? It's incorrect, and it is very confusing when I see so many different numbers over here, right? So visually there is so much to fix, and UX, from a UX standpoint, of a product standpoint, there is a lot to fix over here. So let me show you how I went ahead and started fixing this. So these are all the iterations. I'm going to go one by one. So I started off with going one data point at a time, keeping things very simple, right? So first of all, I changed it from since June 18, which is a very weird way to represent date, to say June 18 to July 18. Very simple and straightforward. There is no way you're going to be confused over here, all right? And I took the same card that I had here that I created for the home screen. I took that and put that over here. Of course, we can look at the numbers later, but I've just tried to polish the design, and this looks fine, right? No problems over here. The next iteration, we wanted to add when the statement is coming. This is quite important. If you have multiple credit cards and they have multiple date, it makes sense to show this upfront because you're probably waiting to see when your credit card is coming, so that you probably want to keep aside some money. Whatever it is, this is important information to have, which is very contextual, right? So I added a divider and I added this piece of text underneath. Now I know that I haven't used dividers anywhere else in the app, and that was like a design decision that I wanted to practice, and I haven't used it in the other parts of the app. If you've seen any of the previous videos, you would see that I haven't used it, but it became very difficult to actually have this piece of text with this design language of having multiple colors and, you know, surfaces and things like that. And it became very impossible for me to design something sensible without using a divider. So I decided to make an exception and add a divider over here. This is probably one of the biggest problems of having this visual language, which I don't really like, is to have multiple colors and dividers and so many things going on, right? So I tried another option over here, which is by basically taking statement expected for April 18 and put that over here as a subtext. But I somewhere feel like people would sort of not pay attention to this, and I wasn't really sure. And it became even more clear when I tried to do this, where I said, instead of saying June 18 to July 18, let's say this is the month July 2024, right? So if it is July 2024, then I'm looking at all the information for July 2024, and the statement is expected on July 18th, but we're missing out on this information of when it is from June 18th to July 18th. So I decided to try something else where we would say this information is for July 2024. The dates are June 18th to July 18th, and I brought this back down here into the card because what is important over here is that this amount is due on July 18th, right? So we want to ensure law of proximity over here and club these items together because that is how we would sort of consume it together, right? So obviously these two work in a pair and these two need to work in a pair, right? So this is what I sort of finalized with. Now there's another piece of information, which is basically this, which was how much was utilized. Now, as I mentioned over here, I don't believe that this is really important information to have upfront. Now, it is important information to have, but not upfront. And when you're sort of having so many information pieces and data points, sometimes this might not get attention and you're basically cluttering the interface, right? And I truly believe a lot of people are not really interested to know this, but I decided to add it over here and say 0.8 unutilized and added a chevron. Now, the reason I added the chevron is because it opens up this another screen over here. And so we wanted a way to sort of show that information, right? Now, ideally, this entire card was supposed to be not clickable. That was how I intended it. This entire thing should not be clickable. And so I added the chevron only to this part over here. But I wanted to try other options and see if without tapping on anything, can we still show the information up front? Because if this entire card looks tappable but it's not, and we just make this area tappable, it gives the wrong affordance, right? Because it looks tappable, but you're not going to let me tap it. And only when I tap on this, you're going to show me the entire split of the credit bill, right? So I wanted to try something else, and I came up with another option over here where I kept the top part as it is. None of this is tappable. And then I broke down this area into credit usage. And as you can see, I didn't even put enough thought into it because the moment I started designing it, I didn't really like it at all. And this is, again, not important for users. Users don't have to see this upfront at all, right? So I tried another option, tried to combine it with some sort of progress bar and say available limit and show the credit amount as well. But of course, then this didn't make sense because showing how much is left is not 0.17%, right? How much is left is probably 99%. And so showing how much I have spent, which is 0.17, along with how much is left, didn't really make any sense, right? So I ditched that idea also. Tried another one over here where I just said 0.17, but then this progress bar is not adding any value. None of this makes any sense, right? And users don't really care about this that much. So what I decided was to take a break and come back to this later and figure out other things over here. So this is what we had sort of finalized. This is the month for July. This is how much is outstanding for July. And the statement is expected on July 18th, right? When the period gets over here. Now, one other case that I had to consider was this. If I quickly show you over here. So we have the bill paid section, right? And this is basically indicating to the user that this bill is from the previous month, which is not yet paid, right? And which is why it is getting added to this value because it's not yet paid, right? Because this amount is 2,768 plus the current expenses that I've incurred for July. All of that combined is this, right? So I wanted to explain that in a much better way. So what I did here was I just added another line of text that said 2,768 is due for June 2024, right? This is July 2024. This amount is due for June 2024, which is why it is being combined with the current expenses and coming up to 4,089. This made a lot more sense. Now, when I came up with this design, I was able to figure out the interactions. So tapping on the card would then show us this entire split of all the information that we need to show, because that is related to how 4089 is coming into picture. And tapping on this area, which is 2,768 due for June 2024, would give me the option to pay the bill for that. Because when I tap on bill paid, it will show me this bottom sheet, and I'm going to show you this flow a little bit later. This is a part of a separate flow, but basically giving an entry point for users to pay this over here if they haven't paid it. And paying here doesn't really mean you pay the bill. You basically record the payment transaction for that, right? The payment is not possible. It's just recording the payment transaction, right? So coming back over here, this is what I sort of finalized with. So for July, this is the total amount, and a part of this amount is 2,768, which is due for June 2024, which is the previous month. And I finalized the designs over here, and let me show you all of this together. I have two options. So the first one is this, where we highlight this because obviously we want people to focus on this, and every time they open it, if they haven't paid it, they can go and pay the bill in cred or their native bank account or whatever they want to use. And this is also very clearly indicating that 4089 consists of this and all the transactions that you made for the current month, right? Now, this is what they are following, but I still am not a big fan of this, and I believe we should go with option 2. And I would love for all of you to let me know in the comment sections which one is more intuitive for you. So here, the second option is for the month of July 2024. I have only spent 1,321 rupees from June 18th to July 18th, right? So all the transactions that you see over here are going to be for the period of June 18th to July 18th, which comes up to 1,321 rupees. And this value of 2,768 is only here on the screen as a reminder for you to go back and record your transaction, right? And this for me makes a lot of sense than seeing this, which is a combination of 2,768 and all these expenses that I incurred for the current month, right? Now, ideally, if I were the designer in this company, I would go with this approach. But for the rest of the screens that I'm going to show you, I'm going to be following this approach just to make sure that you guys don't get confused, even though I believe this is the wrong way of showing the numbers over here. All right, let's move on. The next part is actually the credit card information, right? So this screen that we see over here, we actually see this when we tap on this card, right? This is the pattern that I figured out. When I tapped on this, I would like to see all this breakup. So let's understand what's happening over here. First of all, you've got this credit balance. You've got so much information. You've got so many font sizes, so many colors. There is so much going on. And this math itself is going to take so much time for people to understand because of the way it's represented, right? You might assume it is 5,000 minus this, minus this, minus this, you get this, but it's not. The math here is quite different. So let's understand. So the credit limit is 5 lakh rupees. This is how much I can spend. And what we have here is the unbilled section, which is for the current month. So this has not yet been billed to me, right? So for the current month, since June 18th, this is how much I spent, which is 1,321, which is basically this value that you see over here, right? This is ideally how it should be. This is how much I spent in this time period. You also have the unpaid dues, which was transactions that were billed for the previous month, right? So this 2,768 rupees that you see is basically this, which was billed for me for the previous month, for the month of June 2024. This is how much I should pay because my credit card bill is generated, right? And that is currently under billed and it is unpaid because I haven't paid the bill yet. And combining both of this gives me 4,089 rupees, which is basically what you see over here, which I believe is incorrect to be shown. And then 5 lakh rupees minus this 4,000 rupees gives you this. So it is so important to present this in such a very easy to consume way. And I'm sure a lot of you might only be understanding because I'm explaining this. It took me forever to understand what is happening over here when I looked at this for the first time, right? And then you have this on top. So it says 99.2% left, 0.8% used, which is, I would ideally want to see one of it, right? What is left and what is used, which is important to the user, right? Probably how much is used is more important than probably what is left. And this is so disconnected from this information, right? So I would ideally want to know 99, if I've used up 0.8%, how much is that? Or if I'm seeing 99.2% left, how much is that, right? So ideally this should be somewhere down below and connected with this because then it is so easy to make that correlation and consume information much faster. Or else I'm just going to be staring at the screen and trying to figure out everything because everything is thrown everywhere on the screen, right? And this is really not well thought through. So I came up with a few ways of solving this. So the first one is I just try to start off by just putting all the information up front, right? So how much was unbilled for the current month? How much is billed? And total outstanding. Now, of course, these values and the copy over here is very confusing. I totally get that, right? Which is why I came up with another option over here where I added a divider and I added some visual hierarchy, but I don't think this was also solving the problem, all right? But I wanted to have everything on the screen where I put the credit limit here also. So we have credit limit of 5 lakh rupees, total outstanding of 4,000 rupees, and then available limit is this. But the information we are missing here is the percentages, and for some reason it's important for Fold Money to show it, and maybe it is to a certain degree, but I still would not agree that it's very important. And this, again, there was so much text going on, there was so much happening, I didn't really like it. I came up with another option and tried to split it visually. I added just a little bit of hierarchy and changed the font size and the colors of this. This also didn't really solve the problem. So I came up with finally something that looked a lot better to understand. And if you think about users, what is it that they actually want to know? So of course, total outstanding, we bring that and then we show how much is unbilled. So 4,089 is a combination of 1,321 and 2,678, right? What is this basically? This is billed for the previous month and this is unbilled for the current month. So all the expenses that I incurred the current month, they're still unbilled because the credit card bill is not yet generated. And then we would have the bill for the previous month, right? But here again, essentially, if we went with this approach, right? If I probably bring this over here and make a quick copy so I can explain this to you guys. If we went with this approach where we are only showing the total for the current month, this would look a little bit different. Now, what is important to understand here is that this would still make sense provided I did not pay 2,768 on time, right? So if I'm supposed to pay the June bill, but I did not pay it, that means that this 2,768 is something that I have to pay along with the July bill together because I did not pay it at the appropriate time, right? I missed the payment, which is why now I have to pay that along with 1,321 rupees, including any interest that I may have, right? So if I missed paying the credit card bill at the appropriate date, then it would make sense to combine it with the current expenses because now I have to pay the last month and the current month expenses also, right? In that case, combining it would make sense, right? But this screen is purely based on the previous version, which is option 1, which is basically we combine the current expenses and what is due, right? And for the available credit limit, again, this is how much is left, right? You have the total and the total outstanding, which is basically coming from here. And it's very basic mathematics, right? So this plus this is this, and this minus this is this, right? Pretty simple and straightforward to understand. And I mentioned here in subtext saying that your current usage is 0.8. Ensure it's less than 30% for a strong credit score. Now, I know this might not be the best way to represent. Of course, we could add some progress bars or something. But I think without having any of that, this is so easy to understand. And if we sort of compare it with what we have, if I just bring this to the side quickly to show you guys, right? This is so easier and faster to understand than looking at something which has 100 different colors and font sizes and, there's a lot going on over here, right? So this is a much better way of simplifying things. Awesome. Now, given that we solved this screen, we need to make sure that this screen is scalable to all the different cases that might exist. So let me take you through all those cases. All right. So I'm going to go by step. So the first stage is, let's say you got your credit card and you've never used it before. You just got your fresh credit card, right? So what that means, and let's say you got it in the month of July, right? So the opening balance for July, which is basically what was left from the previous month, is 0 rupees, right? And you have not made any transactions. So the unbilled for July is also 0 rupees. And so obviously the total outstanding for July is 0 rupees because you just got your credit card today, right? And of course, the credit card bill is not generated and you have not paid the bill. And at this point, you have no user goals. There's nothing for you to do, right? So if I show you how the screen would look like in Fold Money, right? So for the month of July, you have not paid anything and you have not got anything also. And you've got this much left. Now, of course, this information, like I said, is absolutely valueless because I've not paid anything. And so how would that look in my design, right? So with my version, it would look very simple and straightforward like this, right? So for July, I have 0 outstanding and the statement is expected on July 18. That's about it. There is nothing else to talk or show about it, right? This is the easiest and the simplest way to show something for a user. Now, let's go to the next stage, right? Turn all this on. Oops. So for the next stage is where you started making some transaction. So the opening balance is still 0 and you made some transactions, right? And let's say you spent 1,000 rupees. So the unbilled for July, for basically the current month, is 1,000 rupees. And the total outstanding is also 1,000 rupees because 1,000 is what you are supposed to pay when the bill is generated. But the bill is not yet generated. We're still in the credit card cycle, right? And at this point, what would be the user goals? When somebody opens the app, what information do they want, right? So if you look at it, basically they would ask, how much money have I spent so far, right? This is important for me. How much money have I spent so far on a particular date? I want to know that, right? And I might also want to know how much more can I spend this month? Because if I want to maintain that 30% limit, right, which helps you maintain a good credit score, I want to know I don't cross that much, right? So these are pretty much the two main user goals that people would have, right? And what it's important to do is to design the screen accordingly to how important each of these user goals are. So in my opinion, I don't believe both of these are high priority goals, okay? What I believe is that understanding how much money I have spent so far is more important than how much money I can spend this month, right? So the medium priority, I would say, is how much money have I spent this month so far? And the low priority would be how much more can I spend this month, right? Typically, most users would want to look at this so that they will know how much they have spent so far, right? And this also includes the categories, or basically they want to see the transactions also, right? Now the transactions we're going to show anyway, it doesn't matter. But what they would probably want to know is the total value, right? So this definitely not important, and these would be our two goals. So depending on that, this is how the screen would look like with their old design. So 1,000 outstanding, 1,000 due, and here it says bill paid. Now the weird thing here is that you actually can pay the bill a bit early, right? You don't have to pay the bill when the credit card bill comes. You can pay it beforehand itself, right? They're giving you the option to do that, but I truly believe it doesn't make sense to do that already over here. We should remove this feature of allowing users to pay for a bill even before the credit card bill is generated. I don't even know how many people actually pay before the credit card bill comes. It's very rare to see that, right? And if I were to show you in my redesign, it's very straightforward. 1,000 rupees outstanding, it's coming from over here, one transaction, that's it. I don't need to see any other information because it's not relevant over here, right? And the low priority goals, how much more can I spend this month? Of course, you can tap on this card and you can see that information, but majority users want to know how much have I spent so far. You have spent 1,000 rupees so far with this one transaction. Very simple and straightforward. All right, let's go to the next case. All right. The next case is when the statement arrived, right? So now it's the month of August. Now, the opening balance for August is 3,032 rupees, which is basically all this money I spent in July. So maybe I spent 1,000 rupees now, and then later I spent a little bit more. So the entire bill for July is 3,032 rupees. And it is the beginning of the credit period. So I have not spent anything for August. And so that outstanding for August is 3,032 rupees, which includes, the previous month bill. And obviously the credit card bill for July is generated, and that amount is 3,032 rupees. And I have not yet paid that bill, right? And what would be the user goals? The most important thing for me is that because I have not really made any transactions, I want to know how much is my bill amount because I want to pay the credit card bill. That's the most important thing that I care about, right? So the high priority goal would be that this is pretty much all users are going to care about this, and there are no medium or low priority goals. All right. So how would the screen look in their design? So here it would show 3,032 rupees and the bill due 3,032 rupees. Now this is where I spoke about these two options that we had before. Is do we show combination of the current expenses and the previous bill, or do we only show what is for the current period? So if you see over here, this screen looks very weird because there are no transactions, but still you're saying 3,032 rupees. Why? Because this value is related to the previous month's bill, which is not yet paid. So this visually itself is so confusing. How can there be an outstanding amount for the month of August if I've not made any expenses, right? That is probably the most confusing thing, right? But anyway, I'm still going to go with this approach just for the sake of this video, even though this is not how I would do it if I was a designer at Fold Money. And with the final design, this is how it would be. So 3,032 is due for July 2024, and that's how I'm able to make this correlation. But here there will be absolutely no way for me to figure out how this 3,032 came, where it is coming from, right? Here it is so clear that both of these are connected together, and this is the amount due for July 2024, which is the previous month. And I can tap on this and pay the bill, right? Or basically record the transaction where I paid the bill, right? So this is the third stage. Then let's look at the fourth stage. The fourth stage is I did not pay the bill, but I kept making transactions, right? And this is very common. This is what it's usually in most cases. So the last month's bill, which is the month of July, I did not pay that bill yet. And without paying that bill, I still made transactions for August, and I did not pay the bill because I have a long credit period. I have a long date of 20 days to make the payment. And so my total outstanding for August is 3,032 plus 1,057, which comes up to 4,000 rupees, right? And so here I have three goals, right? It's basically a combination of everything. I need to pay my credit card bill. How much is it? How much have I spent so far? And how much more can I spend? So if we were to take these user goals, the highest would be, hey, I need to pay the credit card bill. That is the most important thing for me. The second priority would be, hey, how much money have I spent this month so far? And the last one would be, how much more can I spend this month, right? So if you look at this and we consider this, when we show user this screen, there is so much going on. I don't even know what to look at, what to focus on, right? For example, if I want to see how much money have I spent this month so far, there is no way to do it. There is no way to understand how much I've spent so far because this 4,089 is a sum total of this 3,000 rupees, which is of the previous month, and what I incurred this month. So I have to sit and manually do 4,089 rupees minus 3,032 rupees, which will give me how much money have I spent so far, right? There is no way to do it, right? The only way for me to do it is by tapping on this and seeing how much is unbilled, and that's completely useless, right? This is what a lot of users would want to see, and this is also something that a lot of users would want to see, right? So it's important to show this upfront and not let users do the mathematical calculation, right? And there is a good chance that I might assume that this 3,000 rupees is the current bill because it's not very clear as to what it is, right? So there is so much of cognitive load and so much of thinking that's needed before I go ahead and figure out what information that I was even looking for. So with the current design, this is how it would be, right? 4,089 rupees for the month of August, and out of that, 3,032 is due for July 2024. But I'm going to repeat this again. I would ideally want to do it a little bit differently, and the way I would want to do it is by doing this. So ideally this should be 1057. So let me do 1057, copy that, paste that over here. And ideally here I would say 1057. So if we do this where we remove this weird addition, if I want to know, I need to pay my credit card bill, what was the bill amount? And of course the app would open up the current month for sure. And I would see, okay, 3,032 is due for July 2024. I got that information upfront. How much have I spent this month so far? Oh, I've spent 1,057 rupees because that is how much I spent, right? Very simple and straightforward. I get that information very quickly. And the last one is how much more can I spend this month? This is again a low priority goal. So we can let the users go one level deeper and get that information. So when they tap on this card, they can get that information, right? So this is typically how I would do it, but I'm still making all the designs with this to follow this approach so that you guys don't get confused. All right. Now the final step is this, which is pretty straightforward, which is I paid the bill, right? So maybe I should not say, I should put 1057. Let me just copy that over here, paste that over here, paste that over here. Okay, cool. So there is no more opening balance because I ended up paying the bill. So I paid the bill here for July, and I only have unbilled transactions for August, which is basically 1057. This is what I incurred this month. All right. And I have to pay that. And the bill is not yet generated for August. For July, it was generated and I paid it, but for August, it's not yet, right? So the only questions I would have is, again, how much money have I spent so far and how much more can I spend this month? This question of I need to pay my credit card bill will not exist because I already paid the credit card bill. So how would that screen look with their design? So here it would be 1057, 1057. This is how much is supposed to be. And these are all the transactions that come underneath, right? This is typically how it should have been. And with my design, because there is no need to pay any credit card bill, I don't really have any entry point for that. I've totally paid the entire amount of, 3,032 rupees, and it's just 1057 and 1057, right? Very simple and straightforward. So you can see that in every stage, we have removed so many problems, cleaned up the UI, solved a lot of the UX issues and a lot of the broken flows, right? Now, finally, let's look into this entire payment system. So this is making the credit card payment. Now, I want to remind everybody that you can't make the payment from here. You can just record the transaction. So let's look at this, right? So this is what I see when I tap on this button. So maybe let me just go ahead and bring this over to the left and clean this up a little bit. Okay, cool. So when I tap on this, I get three options. So it says choose bill transaction. Now, bill transaction is a very weird copy. It's not, what is bill transaction, right? It's like, it should be like credit bill payment transaction or something like that. I don't know what the copy is, but I clearly know that this is what it should be, right? You can choose the credit bill transaction or you can enter the amount manually. How would you like to proceed? You have two question marks over here, which is again weird copy. It should just be choose build transaction. There should not be a question mark here in the title. That makes no sense. And you don't say how would you like to proceed, right? Just say choose credit card bill transaction. You give them the options, right? So one is you can choose a transaction. So if the money was debited through UPI or net banking or whatever, you can choose the transaction. That's a different flow. You can enter the amount manually, because let's say you have HDFC, but you paid the HDFC credit card bill by debiting your ICICI bank account. Then Fold Money is not going to record the ICICI bill bank account because you haven't linked your ICICI bank account, right? So there is a possibility that it's not recorded. And so you have to enter the amount manually. And this is how it would be. It's nice that they're letting you choose the amounts upfront. This is one thing that I like. So you can choose the minimum amount due or how much ever is totally due. So you don't really have to tap on any of the numbers. Although I'm curious to see how this would be on a smaller screen size. There's not much space over here. So are they going to make this scrollable? I don't really know how this would work on other devices. But if anybody has a smaller device, I would love to see how they've designed the screen. And the last one is transaction hasn't synced yet. This is probably the most weirdest thing for me. So when you tap on this, you basically see this screen. Let's wait for the sync. Once the transaction has synced after refresh, you can come back at any time and add it here. I don't even know what this even means. Is it just that the payment transaction is not synced? And what do you mean I can add it here? It should be added automatically and it should be refreshed and synced. So I don't even know what this is doing. And typically, if they're trying to say, if we haven't synced your payment transaction, just wait, right? I think if that's what they're trying to say, they should just do that over here or on this screen, right? When I tap on transaction, if this is not being recognized by the system, then it should just say that please wait until we are able to recognize your transaction, come back later. I don't know why you need to have a third item over here, right? Makes no sense to me. But anyway, I usually make all my payments through Cred. So this is what I see over here. So now here's the weird thing. It actually picked up the wrong transaction. So as you can see over here, it says 2,124, but the value here is 2,768. So it's picking up the wrong transaction. And I have made a transaction of 2,768. I actually have, but that's not showing up over here. You've shown a wrong number. Now, let's assume that this is a bug, right? Let's assume you picked it up by mistake, forgiven, right? So I select this. All right. And then you say your credit card usage will be adjusted according to the value of the transaction. So what this means is, for example, if I did not pay the entire amount and I paid another amount, let's say I paid 2,124 rupees. Let's say I did that, right? It's saying that the credit card usage will be adjusted according to the value of the transaction, which is correct. But what it does, it does not consider 2,124, because if I come to the previous month, if you see over here, this is for the current month and this is for the previous month, it's recorded 2,768 even though the value here is 2,124. Now, if you make simple mathematical errors like this, customers are going to completely lose trust on the product because you're just messing up calculations over here, right? If I pay 2,124, there should still be some amount that I have to pay. And here, this is for the previous cycle. I get it. This is for the previous cycle. But I didn't pay 2,768. I paid 2,124, which means I still have some more money to pay for the previous month. But that calculation is totally messed up over here. And this is sort of very unacceptable, right? And another small interaction thing over here is that, which I find very weird, is here it just suddenly says, see current cycle. But here it says statement in 4 days. Like you're using one, so one of it can't be tapped, one of it can be tapped, and they're two very different things altogether, right? So it's just like they've just randomly picked some buttons, done some design and not thought it through at all, right? So if we move on, I can show you the screenshots for another part, right? So when I tap on July 18, since July, which is basically the current month, and I can choose the previous months over here, all right? And I land over here, okay? So this is for the previous month. So for the previous month, I have to pay 3,032 rupees. Now, like I mentioned before, it's so weird to see that for the previous month and the current month, you see the same values here. It's very weird, right? And here you have the button that says bill due, right? So we have three different things. You have see current cycle, you have statement in 29 days, and you have bill due. So the same CTA doing three different things with three different states makes no sense to me. How did somebody sort of sign off this design, right? And here you can obviously make the payment, which is fine, and the transaction would end up over here. So I'm not going to be showing you this entire payment experience over here. It's quite straightforward, and I don't really want to, spend time making designs for it because it's not really that important to the core flow. But as a final design for the previous month, and this is obviously we're looking at the previous month. So 3032 is for the previous month, right? So this bill is due. And here I would say July 2024, this is the time period and outstanding. And I would say 3032 is due for this month. All right. And obviously in our regular cases, we would say due for the previous month. But if we are in the view of the previous month, then we would say due for this month, and you can pay that over here itself directly, right? And of course, this catches a lot of attention. So instead of saying bill due over here, somewhere on the top right, somewhere randomly placed, we make it very contextual over here with all the focus on this area. Because if you see any of the other screens, if I show you this, for example, the regular one, your eyes will jump everywhere. You have so many font sizes, so many colors, so many radiuses, so many pieces of information, right? But here, if you keep things simple, you get all the information you need. 4,089 rupees paid, statement coming on August, and I have some bill due. That's it. I don't have to look at anything else on the screen, right? So hopefully this makes a lot of sense, and I would love to know what you guys think of this video and if you want more videos like this. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you did, let me know in the comment sections down below. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more amazing, awesome content. I'll see you guys in the next video. So then take care and bye-bye.